the decommissioning of the Civic Auditorium. The town of Latman supports the decommissioning of the Civic Auditorium, as similar communities in size to Estevan, such as Weber, North Battleford, and Yorkton, only have 2 indoor ice rinks. Many surrounding communities in the area, including Stoughton, Latman, Beanfate, Alameda, Mydale, and Torquay, and Oxbow, to name a few, have available facilities and ice time for the city of Estevan to utilize. The drive to these locations is negligible, as rural residents that use these facilities do not live near them, and in the city of Regina, the drive to indoor rinks would be similar in length. In the past, many local communities have supported the city of Estevan in providing grant allocations and donations to the city for the construction of Affinity Place, which, in our understanding, was to replace the aging Civic Auditorium. We feel that with the declining use of many smaller community recreational facilities, that the city of Estevan and the surrounding communities need to work together to utilize the millions of dollars worth of facilities that are within the Estevan drawing area. And that's from Mr. Greg Wallen, Administrator. And basically that was Latman, and he's also the Administrator of Browning. So we've got the RM of Browning and Latman. Go ahead, Councillor Travis.
I happen to have a chance to talk with Greg and a few of the other RMs, and this is kind of I'm really glad they sent this in, because this does kind of reiterate the fact that this was always the plan when Affinity was built, that this would be what would happen with the Civic, and so I appreciate that, and yeah, I think this is it's unfortunate that we had to lose the Civic, but I think this is, you know, establishing that this was always kind of in the game plan, that that would be what we'd have to do, and unfortunately the building is just not feasible anymore. So
exactly. Thank you, Councillor Frank. Any other questions or comments? If not, could I have a motion, please, to accept these 2 letters? Thank you. Councillor Travis. Yeah, Councillor Travis. Thank you, Councillor Nibbs, and seconded by Councillor Frank. All in favour? Carried. Thank you. Next, under original communications, delegations, and petitions, we have from the Estevan Minor Hockey, we have a request for the reimbursement of the ice plant funding from the Civic Auditorium. To your worship and city councillors, Estevan Minor Hockey Association is formally requesting the city to consider reimbursement for the money that was donated toward the ice plant for the Civic Auditorium. The understanding at the time, and why there was no questions by the membership, was that this generous amount would guarantee that the Civic would be utilized for a much longer term than what we are currently faced with. This motion was voted on and accepted with a large amount of support by voting members of the EMHA. Minor Hockey is committed to continue to work together in a team effort with City Council to keep minor sports viable and growing into the future. And that's from Mr. Craig Warner, President of Estevan Minor Hockey. So what's the wish of Council? Go ahead, Councillor Vroba.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was actually a member of Estevan Minor Hockey Association when this took place, and basically what they were told was that the city was not going to replace the compressor, so that was kind of why the Estevan Minor Hockey agreed to give. However, we've soon now learned that there was no actual written agreement, so I'm not opposed to giving the money back. I think if we give it back, we give it back in whole, and the compressor is still going to be used as a backup. That's so right. It's not like the compressor's garbage. I just think in the future, if we're going to enter into any kind of agreement where we accept money from an organization, the money is clear. It's written on an agreement as to why and how the money's given, so that we don't
attachments. Yeah.
Right, so that we don't run into this issue again.
Okay, thank you for that. Do we have a motion, or what's the wish? Go ahead, Councillor Frank, please.
I'll make the motion that we proceed with
paying back
the $20,000 that they donated.
Okay, thank you. Have we got a seconder? Councillor Nibbs. Further discussion? If not, all in favor? Okay, carried. Thank you. Next, under original communications, delegations, and petitions, we have from Reagan's the CART report for February 2018. Could we have a motion, please, to accept this report as presented? Councillor Vroba, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Yanish. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next, under original communications, delegations, and petitions, we have from the Southeast Transportation Planning Committee, the minutes of February 27th, 2018. Could we have a motion to accept this? Thank you, Councillor Nibbs, seconded by Councillor Yanish. Any further questions or comments on that? We don't have Dennis here, but all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next, under written reports of committees, we have from the Estevan Public Library, the programming highlights of 2017. A very good report. Could we have a motion, please, to accept this as presented? Councillor Hoffert, seconded by Councillor Nibbs. Thank you. Any further questions? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Also, under written reports of committees, we have the Estevan Arts Council minutes of January 10th. Could we have a motion, please, to accept these as presented? Councillor Hoffert, seconded by Councillor Yanish. Any further questions or comments? If not, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next, under executive reports, we have from the tax assessor, the tax enforcement permission to proceed for title. City manager, I don't know, did you want to just briefly explain that? We do this every year. Yeah.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, this is just to give us the approval to go forward with our tax enforcement. So these are the amounts that have not been collected as of far. We've gave registered matters, phone calls to try and collect. This is just the next step. So another letter will be issued to these property owners stating that we could proceed with the tax title process. So that's it.
Okay, thank you, City Manager. And at any time after the expiration of 6 months from the date on which a municipality's interest based on a tax lien was registered, the municipality may, by resolution, authorize proceedings to request title to any parcel included in the list with respect which the arrears of taxes have not been paid. The recommendations, every attempt has been made to collect on these accounts. My recommendation, this is from Trina Sieben, our tax assessor, would be for council to make a resolution granting permission to proceed with tax enforcement on the title. Have we got a motion? Thank you. Councillor Yanish, have we got a seconder? Councillor Nibbs, any further questions? If not, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next, from Roads and Drainage, we have the 2018 traffic paint tender. And the recommendation is that Cloverdale Paint be awarded the 2018 traffic paint tender. Cloverdale Traffic Paint is used in many Saskatchewan communities and meets the VOC of Canada regulations. So that will be for $37,673.97. What's the wish of council on this? Councillor Nibbs?
This is a budget item already?
Yes.
Yeah.
So is that your recommendation to move forward with it? Okay, thank you. Have we got a seconder? Okay, Councillor Frank, any further questions? If not, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next, we have from the city clerk, Privacy of Information Policy, 2018-69. The Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, FOIP, and the Local Authority Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act, LA FOIP, are designed to do two things. Number one, give the public a right to know what the government/municipalities are doing, and number two, to protect the privacy of individuals. Neither act applies to private business or association, but covers all levels of government, including municipalities. The 5 principles of the act can be described as follows: the right of access to records, the right of access to correction of personal information, limited exemptions to the right of access, prevent unauthorized collections, use, disclosure of personal info, and provide for independent review of decisions. Most times, information can be provided to people inquiring for information in the municipality without a formal request. For the times that we are uncertain, the Act exists to protect individuals, and we have the ability to contact the provincial agency for clarification in any situation. So there is a need to develop private policies and practices, train staff, review, and test the process against fair information principles. So the recommendation is the clerk has attached a private policy that has been vetted through HR and recommend that it be approved for implementation to allow for the governance of LA FOIP in the city of Estevan and to have a program set up to ensure that the fair practices are enforced. So have we got a recommendation, please, from council to move forward on this?
Acceptance and approval, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Hoffert, have we got a seconder? Okay. Councillor Vroba, any further questions? If not, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next, from the fire chief, we've got January and February 2018 fire reports. Could we have a motion to accept these fire reports, please, from the fire services? Councillor Yanish, seconded by Councillor Frank. Any questions? If not, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next, we have from the building official, the building permit report for February 2018. Could we have a motion, please, to accept this report as presented? Councillor Nibbs, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Vroba. Any further questions?
Sorry, I sleep in there.
Okay, no problem. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Next, from Helen Fornwald, we have our annual EMO report. So Helen has been very busy. I'll just quickly try to condense what she's all been doing. Annual fire safety inspections were completed in all city-owned facilities. The schools were attended with interactive school presentations. The airport emergency plan was revised. An airport tabletop exercise was held with EMO team members. Continued partnership with Golden West Radio regarding the SASC alerting system. Conference calls with Environment Canada dealing with severe weather watches and warnings. Interviews were conducted with local media. Attended annual SEPA, Saskatchewan Emergency Planning Association conference. Continuously updating the contact information with new contacts. More school presentations. A natural gas leak was reported, and Helen helped with fire services to deal with that. 8 homes were affected by that. There was a small evacuation. That was the south side of 300 block of 4th Street. She attended Rafferty Alameda Dam emergency plan meeting. The existing mutual aid, Helen updated that with new partners. And as you're already aware, we passed that. We'd had a signing with all of the partners for mutual aid, which will benefit everyone. March 7th and 8th, severe snowstorm. Left approximately 126 motorists stranded on Highway 39, so that was last year. Arranged flood relief equipment to be stored in Estevan for this part of the province. Introduced Sask Power to electricity, a killer to summer students. More emergency digs on Perkins, Dieppe Crescent work, King Street construction. This was last July, grass fires. Develop website information for the new website, continued to update the EMO plan, made arrangements for the EMO office relocation, which city manager will be the new fire hall, correct? I worked with the airport manager on security plan, did emergency evacuation drills at City Yard and City Hall, developed an emergency written plan for airport special events, met with the Salvation Army, signing a memorandum of understanding, attended Border on Disaster Conference in Lloyd, attended Sask Alert training for new updates, and assisted the 2018 Men's Provincial Curling Tankard Planning Committee developing a security plan for this event. So again, Helen's been busy. Could we have a motion, please, to accept that report as presented? Thank you, Councillor Vroba, seconded by Councillor Hoffert. Any further questions? Go ahead, Councillor Vroba.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just going to say that when they talk about Sask Alert, we actually on our phones have a Sask Alert app, and so the city of Estevan is on that now. So we would just encourage people to look that app up. It's called Sask Alert, and then if there's ever a danger to the city, you'll get your alert right on your phone instead of not knowing about it. So it's
That's
very
right.
important.
Thank you. That's very good information. Thank you, Councillor Vroba. Okay, did we go all in favor, City Clerk? Not yet. All in favor? Thank you. And next, we
Your
have...
Worship, I'd like to declare myself a conflict of interest.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Let it be noted that Councillor Yanish has left the chambers while we discuss fuel and lubricants tender for the city of Estevan. So we opened the tender March 6th. We had accepted 3 fuel and lubricant tenders. Southern Plains Co-op submitted the lowest price for the fuel tender, and I recommend that the city accepts this bid from April Sandoff. So we've got on oils, we've got 19,454. And then from Parkland Fuel, Blue Wave Energy was 20,131. Wow, that was close. And Macomb Automotive, $22,026. So the, and then the fuel tender was 297,000 from Southern Plains and 317 from Parkland Fuel. So could we have a motion, please, to move forward with the lowest tenders in both these cases? Oh, go ahead, Councillor Vroba.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think the recommendation is not to move forward with both lowest tenders, but to actually move forward with Blue Wave. The lubricant is basically, Blue Wave came in not the lowest, but the co-op actually did not meet the standards of the city. So the
Okay.
recommendation is to go with Blue Wave
Well,
for the
the-
lubricant
the first
and the
rec-
co-op for the fuel.
Well, what we can do is break this up because the recommendation is to go with the lowest price for the fuel tender,
Yes.
and that is co-op.
Yeah.
So let's do that one first.
I would make that motion then.
Okay, and have we got a seconder? Okay, Councillor Nibbs, all in favor? Okay, and then secondly, the second one is the lubricants, and that was, Blue Wave. So have we got a Okay, go ahead.
Where's Blue Wave out of?
They're local, I believe.
They're
They're
local?
Parkland Fuel.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
The name I didn't hear.
Yeah, it kind of tossed us too,
Yeah, okay.
but
Good.
yeah, with Parkland Fuel, yeah. So are we okay then? That will be the lubricants tender. So have we got, okay, Councillor Nibbs, seconded by Councillor Frank. All in favor? Thank you. Okay, and then tonight, could we please, thank you, Trudy, call Councillor back in. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Yanish. Okay, next, under introduction of bylaws, we have none this evening. Public hearing and reports, we have none. Giving notice, none this evening. Motions from committee, none. Consideration of bylaws, tonight we were to give the utility rates established for the city of Estevan. Second and third reading tonight. We have got, usually I ask the city clerk if there's any people that have come forward. In this case, with the utility rate increase, we've got 2 people that have come forward. We have Mr. Jared Stang. I'll quickly read his letter. I'm writing in regards to the utility rate increase. It's been approved by City Council. This is including the citizens of Estevan that have already paid to have their infrastructure replaced. I strongly disagree with this decision. When I purchased my home in 2012, the original bill for replacement was $10,224.41. The previous homeowner at the time made two payments of $1,372.76. The option I was given at the time was that the current owner would pay in full and increase the original asking price of my home by $8,179.52, or I could take over the existing balance, pay it in full, or make annual payments, which would include an annual interest rate of 5.75%. I decided to pay my infrastructure in one installment to avoid being burdened with interest. It was hard to accept after just purchasing the home, but I figured the work did need to be done and that no matter where I was going to purchase, I would eventually have to pay it up front or be penalized with interest, or so I thought. Why all of a sudden this has changed is frustrating. All current homeowners of Estevan should have to be held accountable for their individual infrastructure replacement. I'm finding this hard to accept considering I'm not even sure why the change was approved, not only to not make people pay their portion in full and interest applied on payment plan, but to even make the people who have already paid help pay theirs as well. I have heard it's due to council members thinking the majority of people in Estevan simply do not have that kind of money to be able to pay up front. I'm not sure if this is the case, but if so, I tell you this, at the time, being 25 years old, I didn't have it either. But to avoid penalty, I made it work. It was hard at the time, but the work was fitting. The city does need work, and I'm willing to pay my share of what it needs to be done. To make people pay twice is, in my honest opinion, terrible. There are many different ways to avoid such conflict. Why are the citizens that have already paid simply not exempt? Why could there not be a rebate or refund program? I.e., if the budget for 18 is already finalized, why couldn't the city give a refund to the homeowners' 2019 property tax? This gives the city a year to make the appropriate adjustment. Could we simply not increase the ones that have not paid in full from 10 to 15 or 20? I don't know the ratio of people who have paid to the people that have not, so I'm just using this as an example. I have spoken to many frustrated people about this, and I feel if council is not willing to make some type of compromise to this the first time, they simply will not listen, period. I have also spoken with people who say it's good for the ones that didn't have to pay, but it's still not right. In conclusion, I thank you for taking the time to hear out my concern. I feel this matter is very frustrating, but I do feel that the current council members have options and will try to do everything they can to make sure the citizens of Estevan are being treated equally and fairly. Again, thank you for your time. Respectfully, Jared Stang. And the other letter we have is from Mr. David Mack. I want to address the 2018 utility rate bylaw, in particular, the infrastructure fee rate increase. I am opposed to the fact that my home has been charged the additional infrastructure fee over and above the cost of the completed underground utility project from 2008. This is an unfair fee to those who've had local improvement projects completed, and most of the city council members that I've spoken to since December 21st, 2017 agree with me in principle. But I see by the recent comments in the Estevan Mercury, my concerns to this billing practice were basically shrugged off. I think this is double billing the affected homeowners and needs to be corrected with the 2018 utility rate bylaw. Our street had the utility lines replaced in late summer of 2008. My property was billed approximately $10,000 in repair costs, the other portion covered by government and municipal project grants. In 2004, as per the Estevan Mercury article, City of Estevan introduced the infrastructure fee to all residents. My assessed billing didn't occur until 2011 tax year. So I have paid $20 per billing cycle for 14 years at a cost of approximately $3,360. This, of course, is the cost to unaffected homeowners as well. Having said this, I have paid $1,200 into the infrastructure fee account prior to my street being worked on. By the time my payments are completed in 2022, I will have paid another $1,800 using the new fee of $30 per billing cycle. When my payment plan has run its course in 2022, my costs will be approximately $15,160. Here is my estimate of the costs billed to my property. $10,000 approximate value of my portion of the local improvement, $1,200 2004 introduction of fee to 2008 start of my project on my street, $2,160 2008 fee from the start of the project on my street to 2018, $1,800 2018 projected increased fees to the end of my payment plan to 2022. So he's added that all up to $15,160. I feel that the fees that were charged during the work period and inclusive of the payment plan time frame should be credited to those that have been through the local improvement projects. I feel this money has been paid up front and the approximate $10,000 assessed to my project. $3,960 would be the cumulative value of additional collected fees in this time frame. I think this would be fair compensation. I hope there will be fair and conscientious discussion by all council members on this matter, and this is from Mr. David Mack. Go ahead, Councillor Nibbs.
Both well-written letters.
Yes.
I guess, and a lot of thought put into it, but where do we stop? Where do we ever, if they had have done this in 2008, the council of the day, they wouldn't have paid those bills. So my thing is, where do we stop and how do we move forward in a positive way that people don't get $10,000 unexpected bills? And that's why I support it. I'm sure everyone has their own reasons why they do or don't. But if we don't start now, unfortunately, we can't go back in time to 2008 and say to the council of the day, add $10 on, and this won't be a problem. I do feel for them, and I understand where they're coming from with having already prepaid it. But it isn't going to happen anymore. So, it does fix something, but hard feelings to the ones that have paid for it. But anyone else, like I said, if this had been in 2008, they wouldn't be at all upset. They would have reaped it. So at some point, we have to move forward with it, and I hope that everyone can understand that there'll be no more of these bills, and some of us have paid it ourselves, these infrastructures, and we're also feeling it. So it's not that it's just moving Estevan in a positive way that these bills are going to stop.
Yeah, no, you make a good
Just my
point,
thoughts.
because we were at 50-50, and that's what the infrastructure fee did. Essentially at the beginning, was pay 50%, from 80-20 to 50-50. And now, council made this decision during budget to move forward, and it does have to start sometime, and that is that moving forward, the people affected won't have to pay. Councillor Frank?
Well, and I appreciate you saying that, because I think that's one thing that's not necessarily understood by everybody, is that $20 is the other half or other portion of that fee. That $10,000 bills isn't the full cost of replacing that infrastructure. It was
That's
double
right.
that. That $20 was what was covering that. We're moving to a structure where we'll just cover 100% of that and not stick the large burden on people. So that is something definitely to consider. I agree with Trevor. That's it's unfortunate and frustrating for those who've had to pay for it, but I think it still can be the right move. So.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Frank. Councillor Yanish?
Thank you, Your Worship. I do feel moving forward it's a good idea, but I do feel I wish there was some way we could give a rebate back to some of them, to the principle of the whole thing. I know you can't go back, buy a car from Trevor today, and 3 months down the line, if it went down $3,000, try and get it back. Maybe there was some way we can give a rebate on taxes or any of that thing. To me, I've had a lot of citizens talk to me that were concerned, including these two gentlemen here, which I'm glad they wrote letters, because we've never gotten letters from anybody, and that's the good thing.
It's true.
Yeah. I like the going forward. That's a great idea, and none of these guys have a problem with that. The principle of what they've paid, now they're going to pay more for somebody else's house to get done too. That's what my concern is.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Yanish. And before we go to Councillor Vroba, City Manager, you and our people did look at the possibility of going back and some way trying to rectify the situation. Did you want to speak to that? Like, you did spend a lot of time and energy on that. It isn't something we just dismissed out of hand.
Thank you, Worship. Yes, when this was first brought up, council asked us to do some digging. It could be done as a credit basis. There's a lot of logistical issues in regards to people that, that there is some issues with people who have prepaid compared to ones that are on a payment plan. So I know some of the discussion was trying to credit the people that are still paying, but now you're penalizing the people who prepaid. If someone paid then moved and had in the sale of the house, how do you rectify that? If council wants us to go back and dig into that a little more, we definitely can. The total figure of people that were affected would be about $45,000. So the $10,000 was raised to increase that infrastructure fee about $200,000 to $220,000 so we could complete the work. This would reduce that by about $45,000 on a yearly basis.
Okay, thank you very much, City Manager, for that explanation. And we do have a bit of a logistical problem with your mic, City Manager, but we'll get that fixed up for the next meeting. So Councillor Vroba, then Councillor Nibs.
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just going to say, I voted in favor of moving the extra $10, $5 per month. And it's because I also have had people come up to me on both sides of the matter. And sometimes you might pay it at one house, and then you move to another area, now you're going to pay it at that house. So as a city, we had to do what's best moving forward. I also have family members who basically are still paying for it. And it was a difficult decision, and one that like you said, we worked to try and find a way to compensate, and it was a hard task to try and figure out a way that would be fair for the people who have already paid and who are still paying. So I'm not sure what the right answer about that is. If there is a way we could find compensation, I don't think there is, but I think moving forward we're doing the right thing. And like we said, Council of the Day back in 2004 felt that this was right, and Council today feels that this is the better way. So
Right. Okay, thank you, Councillor Vroba. Councillor Nibs, then Councillor Hoffer.
Do we actually have a total number, if we wrote back everyone from 2008, what that check would be, just so people have an idea? I think maybe if we can publish that amount of how much money that actually would be, saying even if you moved or you did these things, just writing a check back to everyone, knowing the scope of how much money it would be, that people could understand that there's no way the city could afford to do it and do any future projects for the next 10 years. So maybe if we can just get that information of what that total check would be so people can put it into perspective.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Nibs. We could research that information, and if you like, even we could postpone till the next meeting and make the final second and third reading at that meeting. If, we could, through the city manager and his office, go and do some more research on that, if council decides. But.
Well, I don't think the moving forward part is going to change, because I think everyone, for the moving forward, the rebate thing can always be discussed for
Okay.
a long time. As far as this, we're going ahead.
Right.
For the simple fact that no one else is going to have bills, and I think anyone with work being done on their street will be,
We'll want that.
well, even myself, just for the protection of knowing that for $10, I will have no bills going forward. So I don't think that changed it. I think these people are more concerned about rebates, and that's a whole nother conversation than
That's a
our
very good
agenda.
point. We can spend the time, even if we pass this tonight,
Yeah.
we can still spend the time through the city manager's offices and researching and seeing what we can do to help compensate in some
And
fashion.
if we can, I would be the one of the first people to say, yes, let's do something, but we need those numbers, we need those things. Moving forward, it doesn't change for me, the fact of this.
Okay, good point. Councillor Hoffert, then Councillor Frank.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. As usual, our decisions turn out to be a very complicated decision, in large part due to our fiscal reality we faced with. And 5 years ago, we set a course to regain fiscal responsibility and among other things, tackle the debt. But fiscal responsibility is, as you know, a lot more than just debt. It's proper financial management, proper growth planning, proper asset management, managing the city as a whole while keeping the fiscal responsibility in mind. And it's our debt is not just a cash debt, which it certainly is part of it, a 24 million net debt that remains on the 45 million we started 5 years ago with, but it's also an infrastructure debt. And the longer we delay getting back to our water lines and sewer lines, it increases this infrastructure debt. And the previous council did address the infrastructure debt, or they started to, and they started replacing these assets, so credit to them. They didn't address the cash debt, and now we have challenged ourselves and committed to doing both. Because every decision like this is, a big factor in that is the debt and the financial reality that we now live in. So the key is, to make fiscal responsibility the number one priority. We have to reinvent things. Unfortunately, we can't keep every decision that previous councils made in perpetuity. It's doing things differently than they did. We have to change some things up. We have to be able to keep fiscal management, be able to plan for our capital improvements, be able to plan what year we might do these capital improvements, be able to plan to have enough money available when these capital improvements become necessary. So, and also to ensure that we can do them without increasing the debt, because the longer we take to start attacking that debt, or if we delay it, it's gonna be a forever problem and something that our next generation will have to deal with. And I think we all agree this is something we want to leave the city in a better place than when we found it, and better for the next generations. And so I think that is in part why I'm supporting this. The second part of the issue, and to address the two letters, in my opinion, that have been well written, and they've gotten an awful lot of deliberation at the council table, in now in open and in closed, and it's something we've really struggled with, that some folks have in the past years paid through their local improvement because of the previous decisions of council and how they proceeded with this. And I get that, and I understand it and appreciate it. I myself am in that situation as well. My bill was $15,000 about 6 years ago, and now my new bill will be $5 a month to address this for the future, to allow for this proper planning. So to justify it to myself and to my family and others who I talk to, it's this $5 a month is part of the new fiscal reality and responsibility that we can make sure we can move ahead forward in a productive and fiscally responsible manner. It's not unlike many things that the city collectively pays for are not utilized by everyone. There have been sidewalk local improvements. There have been recreation facilities built by one generation, paid for by one, and used by another. And that's just a fact of life in the cities, in the schools, in every aspect of public life. And finally, yes, my share of this is $15,000. 8 or 10 years ago, when the city first decided they were going to do things that way, I approached the previous city administration and said, I don't disagree with this. I think it's not the right direction. And at that time, I didn't even know my street was to be done. And I said, it's something like this. It is a city asset. It's not my personal asset. And therefore, I feel the city should pay for it. Yes, it happens to run by my house, but it services the entire community, not just my house. These lines go everywhere, and they're not my asset to do with what I want. I can't take them with me. I can't sell them. They are a city asset. So I did lobby, and I feel like if that was my opinion 8 to 10 years ago, before I got my $15,000 bill, it should remain that way for the overwhelming majority that don't have their bill yet, as tough as it is. And I think it's a slippery slope when we talk about the rebates. I mean, where do we, as Councillor Nibb said, where do we start and stop? Is it just anyone who's paid during the past 10 years? Is it someone who's in a new subdivision who, via the purchase of their lot, like Councillor Nibbs or other, has paid for their local improvement? Is it someone who's done it within the last 5, 10, 15, 20 years? These assets that we're putting in, they might last 30, they might last 50. At some point, the lot that I'm paying for is going to benefit from the fact of this new policy change, and therefore that $6 a month is, or sorry, the $5 a month, $10 per water bill, $60 a year, is something that I think is something we have to move with. The final thing I wanted to mention in my thought process on this one is the transparency of it all. And we all stood before the voters a year and a half ago, and two of the big things were fiscal responsibility. We all pledged to keep on the debt, to draw the debt down, and we all said transparency is going to be a key of this council moving forward, and I think we've taken great strides in that. And here's why, if you're wondering why I'm rambling on and when I'm going to get to the point on the transparency issue, is it would have been pretty easy for council to, instead of raising the taxes 1%, to raise them 2 or 3%. That would have looked very favorable compared to what we've done for the last 5 years in the city. And as you know from our dialogue at the SUMA convention, the other cities, some of them are way beyond that this year. We could have easily raised the taxes instead of 1 this year, 2 to 3%, and just had the money to do it. Wouldn't have had to mention a word about it. We just would have had the money to get it done. We could have also raised it 10%, or $10 per water bill, $5 per month, like we're doing, and not had any mention of the water line. It's just the cost of things are going up, the water, everything's going up. To the credit of the council, this is a 100% transparent, like our voters demand, like we're doing. We are increasing the water surcharge $60 a year, $5 a month. We're making our water system and continuing to have it a fully funded function of the city, which is credible. We're creating planned and sustainable infrastructure improvement. We're addressing concerns without leaving the problem to the next generation, and we're not moving forward on improvements before the money is in place. So this is a proposal that, yes, it has some challenges. I hear you. I'm in the same situation as the 2 letter writers and others, but it is in the spirit of solid fiscal management and a good direction for the city. So for those reasons, in spite of having already paid my share, I am fully in support of the council direction to add $5 a month to this, and I believe it's in the best interest of our city.
Okay, well, thank you for that, Councillor Hoffert. Councillor Frank.
I guess the only other thing I kind of wanted to touch on, just in terms of, and I agree, if there was a good, fair, equitable way to do a rebates program, I'd be very in favor of it, just out of fairness. The issue I see is the $20 that was there can't be credited back to the 1 letter's comments, just because that's to cover the other portion, as we mentioned, of that $10,000 that was already done. It's already paid for. It is what it is. So the only real rebate program that can really exist is crediting going forward, which works out to $60 a year, which I know we've discussed in this room, and really is not a large amount, and I don't think it's going to make these people any happier. So that's, if there was a better way to be able to do a rebates program, it'd be something I'd be interested in hearing. But I think, to Councillor Knibb's credit, we should still be able to pass this bylaw and then discuss a rebates program. We can continue looking into it if there's a way to do it, but I don't personally see one that's not just going to be a very tiny amount of money that's not going to really appease any of these people, is my concerns.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Councillor Frank. So what I'm hearing from council this evening, we'll go ahead. We'll pass the 2nd and 3rd reading of this bylaw 2018-1994, and we will task the city manager and his people to come up with options on what we can do as far as the rebates. Okay, Councillor Hoffert? Okay, could we have a motion then for bylaw 2018-1994, utility rates established for the city of Estevan, 2nd reading? Councillor Hoffert, seconded by Councillor Vroba. Any questions or comments? Any further questions or comments? If not, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now I'll ask for 3rd reading of bylaw 2018-1994, utility rates established for the city of Estevan for adoption and use. 3rd reading. Councillor Knibbs, seconded by Councillor Frank. All in favor? Carried. Thank you very much. Next, inquiries. Councillor Hoffert.
Your worship, I just had one, the Woodlawn Regional Park had their annual general meeting this past week, and tabled a financial statement with a small surplus, and considered an awful lot of infrastructure this term, so credit to Woodlawn Regional Park and the good work they've done there, and I wanted to pass these documents on to the city clerk for her record keeping. And while I'm on the Woodlawn Regional Park theme, I happen to have some lottery tickets for sale, your worship, that I know you'll be interested in. For the Summer Fun Lotto, it's a fundraiser of Woodlawn Regional Park. all sorts of great prizes available, campers, vehicles provided by local car dealers. Your choice of one of 8 fabulous prizes, so we'll be sure to sell you some tickets right after the meeting.
Okay, sounds great. I look forward to it. Thank you, Councillor Hoffert. Councillor Froba?
Thank you, Your Worship. I actually had an inquiry as to how much snow is heavy snowfall when, basically a homeowner would have to clear their sidewalks as per our bylaw. And so I would think that the answer would be our last snowfall would constitute basically heavy snowfall. But is there anything in our bylaws or anything that basically, like what would be, in my opinion, I would tell someone that you just basically clear it when there's snow or anything that makes it hard to pass in front of your home. If you have snow, slippery sections, whatever, you kind of get rid of that in front of your own home. But do we have an actual answer for, no? Okay, that's what I thought.
City Manager?
Councilor Peralta, so the roads and drainage crews determines a significant snowfall is between 20 and 25 centimeters. So anything at the level where they would have to windrow it and then snow blow it instead of pushing to the side at any point. But there's nothing in the bylaws stating snow removal at a certain height.
Okay. Yeah, and I think the question came because our last ad that we put out on social media basically said after a heavy snowfall. But I think my recommendation would that as a homeowner, you just clear your snow as it comes and keep your sidewalk clear so that everybody's safe to pass. And the bylaw officer does enforce that, so I'd recommend it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Vroba, and
Thank
that's
you.
right. If you do it right away, it's not so tough, absolutely. Councillor Yanish?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to remind the citizens of Estevan that during snowfalls, please do not put your snow on the roads. I've seen so much of that again this time. It makes it harder for everybody else. Sometimes somebody's little car ain't going through that big pile of snow that you just pushed off the driveway onto there. So, and the snow's not going to hurt your grass because there's no salt on it. So, just like to remind the citizens of Estevan.
Thank you, Councillor Yanish, and you can always tell the people that push it out front because there's a big hump in front of their place. Okay, Councillor Frank?
Nothing too much, just exciting news that Alice Cooper's coming to Estevan this August, and tickets are available tomorrow, so make sure you go and get your tickets.
Thank you, Councillor Frank. Councillor Nibbs?
Nothing.
Okay, thank you. City Manager, anything?
Nothing to add, Your Worship.
City Clerk, anything?
Nothing, Your Worship.
Okay, City Treasurer, anything? Okay, thank you. Councillor Yanish?
One other thing, Your Worship, I do think maybe you and I should get a wig to go to that to bring back memories when we go to Alice Cooper, when you had hair.
When we had hair, that's a good point. Thank you, Councillor Yanish. With that, could we have a motion, please, to move into committee? Thank you, Councillor Hoffert, seconded by Councillor Frank. All in favour? Thank you. We stand adjourned. Good evening.